Hello everyone, my name is Ann Purvis and I'm one of the coordinators of the Toronto Field Naturalist Juniors. We haven't met for over a month now, and so it was very delightful to begin to get your photos again and to communicate with you in order to put together this slideshow. Well, we haven't been meeting as junior naturalists. Sandra Iskandar has been offering nature drawing classes that some of our members have been participating in. The first bird they drew was the beloved cardinal. Sandra's is on the left and Amara's is on the right. When we were out hiking in Taylor Creek the other day, we heard the first calling of the cardinals for this season. Amara also drew this lovely blue jay. Sandra says the students have only been using pencil crayons for color. I find the shading on this bird very lovely, done only with pencil crayon. I think many of us would recognize this track deer print that Alexi photographed. That's the middle picture on the right. I got very curious about these two prints that are the smaller prints behind the two toes, and was doing some research and found out they're called dew claws, D-E-W-C-L-A-W-S. They are vestigial toes that only show up when the deer is walking in deep mud or snow. When I went to research about these dew claws, I found out what an amazing adaptation the cloven hoof is for the deer. Deer run at 40 kilometers an hour and jump 8 feet in the air. These hooves are made of keratin, the same thing as our fingernails. The keratin is layered in crisscross patterns and is stronger, harder, and more crack resistant than bone, so it can take the impact of a deer jumping and running. The toenails on the front of the hoof allow the deer to run on its toes, so touching less of the hoof to the ground and increasing its stride. Excellent for pushing off. Deer use their hooves to stomp if they sense danger. Apparently, it's quite common for hunters to see a deer stop running and when it senses their presence and stomp its hoofs. They also have scent glands between the toes to inform other deer they are in the area. Both male and female deer battle predators with their sharp hooves. We might have thought they used antlers. Only the male deer has antlers, and he only uses these during mating season in combat with other male deer. We can also see that Alexi is holding a nest lined with mud on the left, and there's another photo of it just down at the bottom on the right. There are only 3 birds in our area that build a nest like this: robins, grackles, and wood thrushes. Grackles use sticks in the base of the nest. I don't think we can see any sticks that were used here. Wood thrush will use leaves, whereas robins use only grass. This may be a thrush nest, and if so, that is incredibly special, as wood thrush is less common than it used to be. I believe the top photo is raccoon tracks with the 5 toes and a very long palm. Sandra, Alexi, and Sienna are living in Dundas at the moment. Here are 2 magnificent photos of the Niagara Escarpment with its limestone rocks and covered with moss. So this one here on the right, and then this one at the bottom here. Probably got more algae on the rocks than moss, but this one here is just covered with this beautiful luminescent moss. Mosses are so special in that they are vibrant green and spring to life almost by magic as soon as we get a few warm days in the winter. We have moss growing on our garage roof, and on a warm winter day it just glows green. Some mosses love limestone and others love the acidic igneous rocks of northern Ontario. Mosses don't collect water from their roots. They get it from the air or from precipitation and take it in through their leaves. This is probably why they can start photosynthesizing right away on a warm day. They don't have to wait for the soil to thaw to get water. This print up on the left is a 4-toed print, probably a dog. The way the toes are spread apart. When Pamela and Amara first showed me this picture, I was very confused. The holes in the ground only looked big enough for a chipmunk. So if you can see these holes here, and there's several of them in different parts of the picture. There's another one here. The holes in the ground only looked big enough for a chipmunk. Chipmunks hibernate all winter, so I thought maybe this was a chipmunk den surrounded by a gray squirrel cafeteria, tons of pine cone scales that they left lying there when they stripped them from the cone to get at the seeds. Then I read about red squirrels. Red squirrels are the smallest of the 3 squirrels and are almost always associated with evergreen trees. They store large caches of nuts and seeds under the roots or in underground burrows. Near these caches are often piles of discarded scales, chewed off pine or spruce cones. A pile of chewed off pine or spruce cones is called a midden. They may tunnel into the snow, and their tunnels are about 2.5 inches in diameter, so roughly the same size as the diameter of these tunnels going into the ground. So this is a red squirrel den with multiple entrances and piles of discarded cone scales. Thanks, Amara.
Yeah, who knows?
So this is a photograph of a starling by Marina, Sonia, and Mila. I love the gymnastics here. I don't think we could eat our lunch hanging upside down like that. I think human needs a gravity assist for swallowing. Starlings are with us all year round. We can see this one is eating buckthorn berries. In the summer, they are insect eaters and dig in the ground with their beaks to get insects out of the ground. In the winter, they do switch to berries. Buckthorn is not mentioned as a food source in All About Birds. It is interesting to realize that buckthorn is a European species. It's actually a very serious invasive species in Ontario. But starlings also originated in Europe. So it's possible that starlings were eating buckthorn berries in Europe before they ever came to Canada. Starlings are hole nesting, so we see them in telephone poles up to 60 feet off the ground. I love the description of nest building in All About Birds. The male starts building the nest, and then the female does the finishing touches of the soft cup she will sit in. If the male has brought stuff she is not happy with, she will throw it out of the nest. Starlings are also relatives of the mynah bird, which is one of the best bird mimics around. Females sing quite a lot in the fall and are mimicking many other species. So, nice picture of ice, Marina. Whoops, there is a bird in this picture. Anybody name it? Right, this is the red-breasted nuthatch. Nuthatches are the only bird that can actually climb down a tree head first. They crawl up and down trees looking for insects. In the winter, they tend to switch from insects to a nut diet. And to get at the nuts, they'll wedge them into cracks in bark and then hammer at them with their beak. I'm guessing that's where the name nuthatch came from. I was also curious to learn that they tend to stay on territories for several seasons and stick with the same mate. We have a pair in our backyard that do seem to be here year-round. They start mating rituals in late winter, so I'm really looking forward to trying to recognize some of those in the next few weeks. So this is a barred owl. This is the owl that calls, "Who cooks for you?" Barred owls rest like this during the day and hunt at dusk or after dark. They hunt like this too, waiting on a branch and then pouncing on their prey. Barred owls nest in the cavities of standing dead trees, so they need old, mature forest. I'm so glad they're planning to save the forest at Downsview Park. They're around all year, barred owls, and it is thought that they mate for life, raising one brood a year. So great if Downsview Park can keep this owl here by saving those large old trees. These little birds nest in the boreal forest in low shrubs. This is called a redpoll, common redpoll. We only get to see them in the winter when they come down south looking for food sources. They hang out in mixed flocks with their relatives, the goldfinches and siskins, and they're all seed eaters in the winter time. Anybody recognize this hawk? If it could see his tail, what color would it be? It is a red-tailed hawk. You're right. We often see redtails sitting by the edge of a road. This is the hunting style of a buteo, to sit on an elevated branch and wait for prey. I heard an explanation recently of why they wait by a path or a road. In the winter, voles tunnel under the snow to get from place to place. We see the remains of these tunnels when the snow goes away in the spring. However, when a rodent comes to a road or a path where the snow is packed down, they cannot make a tunnel. They must emerge and run across the packed surface. This makes them easy prey for hawks. This is the stem of a sumac branch that Ann and Jim encountered when we were out for a hike in Taylor Creek. Some of you might remember when we were drawing sumac that we found the pith of sumac very soft. We could hollow it out and make beads for a necklace. The tunnel in the soft pith of the sumac may have been built by a solitary digger wasp called Pemphirodon or a solitary cavity nesting bee called Seratina. Both of these live in the Taylor Creek, and it could have been either one of them. They both hollow out the stem, although the wasp might create side passages as well. The wasp will then stuff the brood cell with up to 60 aphids. And aphids are little leafhopper type bugs that you find on many species of garden plants such as sunflowers. Milkweed has aphids. They're very, very common garden pests. So wasps are great for dealing with our garden pests. So they'll stuff one brood cell with up to 60 of these aphids and then lay the egg on top of these stunned insects and seal off the tunnel. Then they set about building the next brood cell. The Seratina bee does the same thing, but supplies each cell with pollen. So wasps are meat eaters and bees are vegetarian, eating only pollen. She fills the tunnel with brood cells from back to front, and then she will guard the nest for up to a year. So a Seratina moth shows a sort of a semi-social behavior of looking after her young, and there are actually reports of a Seratina bee opening the nest to see how the young ones are coming along. I was out running one morning after the heavy snowfall this past week and found these tracks in our civic center in East York. They were right beside a wall. You can see the bounding tracks on the left where the animal has brought its hind feet up to its forefeet, and here's the same track changed to a zigzag pattern. The track started at a garbage can here on the right and it ended at a hole in the wall. I was quite mystified by this. If a squirrel made these tracks, he may have actually not gone into the wall, but climbed the wall. And there were tracks on top of the wall. There is a mark in the snow here, if you can see it very faintly, which looks like a tail drag. Squirrels don't normally drag their tail, but I wondered if a squirrel would do this as it was turning to go up the wall. The next day I saw these bounding tracks that looked like two animals running beside each other. I honestly am not confident of these observations, but I would like to give you a challenge of watching this amazing webinar below on our blog by Eileen Barkley from the Oak Ridges Moraine Land Trust. She is truly an expert on tracking and a very enthusiastic and engaging naturalist. After you have listened to the webinar, please let me know if you have other ideas about my tracks or you have done some analysis of your own tracks. Please send in your photos. See you next month.